So, I'm gonna do a little review. Um, let's see where to start. Jeez. Um, when I first played this game, I pretty much fucking hated it. It was so boring to me. And I mean the motion controls were part of it, but they weren't the biggest part of it. The reason why I hated it so much was because it was so linear. Um, Playing it again though on stream, I have to admit that this game was so much more fun than it was when I first played it. I first played it, just a short time after it first came out. It's been many years since then. And I think a big part of why I like it more is because my expectations for it changed. This game might, in fact, be the most different Zelda game in the 3D series. And one of the most different in the entire series. Zelda 2 would be number one. The reason why this game is so different is the motion controls and the way the game's structured. It is structured in a very linear style. There isn't much exploration to do. When you go into one of these worlds, all the surrounding area that leads up to the dungeon feels very much like a dungeon itself. Because of that, the game feels like back-to-back dungeons with little downtime. There isn't much exploration to do at all. The most you get is a couple of chests that you unlock in the Skyward. Now, with that said, though, since I know what to expect now from this game, I really do enjoy it a lot more. It's actually, I like it better than Phantom Hourglass, and I like it more than Spirit Tracks now. Before I didn't. I actually preferred those games. One thing that I always believe is that this game looks gorgeous. I mean, especially when you consider that this is a Wii game, it looks great. They still use the cel-shaded style that they had in Wind Waker, but not everything is cel-shaded, and the characters are more realistically proportioned, and I think the game just looks fantastic. It's so colorful. And of course the music is fantastic. Every Zelda games always have great music. You can kind of divide the game up into like 4 parts, right? There's the Sky World, there's the stuff leading up to the dungeon, which is a dungeon basically itself, you can call that the sub-dungeon. Then there's the dungeon, and then there's the tier collecting things, which you might count as part of the sub-dungeon. So, unfortunately, since it is structured in that way, there isn't a lot of exploration to do. Turn down the game volume, yeah. There isn't a lot of exploration to do in the game at all, and that's the reason why I didn't like it. But as long as you know what to expect, it's not that bad. What hasn't changed, though, is the motion controls. The motion controls are just a failed experiment. They're just as bad as they were when I first played the game. It's even if they worked 100% of the time, which they don't, the motion controls still wouldn't be fun. The reason is because there's no real strategy to it. I mean, like, yeah, you do. They hold the sword horizontally, then they hold the sword vertically and stuff like that. But it's just you don't have enough time to respond to it. Okay, in that case, yeah, the fact that they're not 100% accurate matters a lot, because you can't change what you're gonna do on the fly very easily, and this becomes most noticeable in the final battle. It is rage-inducing. Sometimes you'll be thrusting your nunchuck out to raise your shield up, which, by the way, is so fucking stupid. The shield is probably the most useless out of all the 3D games in this game, because he doesn't have it. In order to have it presented, you have to thrust the thing out, which is a pain in the ass to do. And it's just so I ended up rarely using the shield throughout the entire game. You don't really the only time when it's actually useful is killing those Octorok things in the final boss, and that's it. Um, what makes it even worse is that you have to use the motion controls for things that uh, aren't necessary. Um, for example, controlling the hook beetle or underwater swimming. All this stuff could have been accomplished with the analog stick, but yet they felt compelled to shoehorn in motion controls for that stuff when it wasn't necessary and didn't add anything to the game. Really, the only necessary stuff was the sword stuff and aiming with the bow, which, by the way, is worse in this game compared to, let's say, Resident Evil 4 for the Wii, because it doesn't use the motion sensor. It uses the accelerometer and gyroscope, and it's inaccurate. You constantly have to recenter, and it's annoying. Other things I like about the game are the items. The items are pretty good. I like the whip. I like the hook beetle a lot. And the blower, at first it was kind of cool, but it's pretty much useless later on. But, you know. Oh, wait, we still have more story. Do Zelda. Nah, he's gonna go back to being a cuck. Okay. So yeah, the items were cool. Some of them, some more than others. Aiming with the bow felt pretty good, except for the it just didn't feel as good as aiming with other games like Resident Evil 4. Um, the other thing that I like is the story. I have mixed feelings about the story though. I mean, this probably is one of the best stories in any Zelda game that I played, uh, with the exception of like maybe Majora's Mask to a certain extent. The story is it's told in a very nice way, and it's not too confusing. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's still saving the world, but like it was just interesting. You know, sometimes it's kind of hard to describe exactly why the story is good. But Ali did mention that what's his name, Groose. He developed as a character, and that actually was pretty charming. Um, you know, he starts out as just being an annoying bully, but then he grows and becomes more mature, and his feelings for Zelda are what helps motivate him, and I like that. You know, there should be more of that in Zelda games. And that's my biggest criticism, which isn't unique to this game. It kind of applies to pretty much every Zelda game, is that there's just no romance. And I know that's like a pussy thing to say for a guy, but I really don't give a shit because this is a game that really does need it. Um, And after so many games, ever since Ocarina of Time, like in Ocarina of Time, I was expecting it to be there and it wasn't. And then ever since then, it's like game after game, every single game never even explores that aspect. And I think that's an important aspect of humanity. And I think that would be really interesting to explore in the Zelda game, but they always cuck us out with that shit, which is fucking annoying. And this would have been a great game to do it because Zelda in this game is actually one of the best Zeldas in any of the Zelda games, in my opinion. She's really well designed, and I like her personality, but yet they just fuck us over with that. When at the end it would have been the perfect time to explore that and to develop it further, but yet nah, it's not gonna happen. They need to finally do that one of these days, at least. They need to do that. Um, uh, yeah, the other thing I didn't really like the Pharaoh tier collecting things. I mean, I guess they weren't terrible. I mean, they're a little intense, and I know some people like that, so there's that. The worst part of the game, aside from the motion controls, is that the collecting of the notes part. That was awful. That was totally unnecessary. They shouldn't have had that. And I felt like it was padding out the game. For some reason, they felt compelled to stretch this game out as long as they could, which I felt was totally unnecessary. I guess maybe because they thought, well, it's a linear game, we gotta compensate for that in some way. They reuse assets in this game so much. I mean, for the when it's weird because like this is probably the longest Zelda game, but yet it has the fewest environments, like in terms of different environments. Like they just reuse the same environments over and over again to the point where they reuse dungeons over and over again. And that's actually what made me quit initially because I was like, "Are you kidding me? You're making me go back to a dungeon I repeat." They never did that in the previous Zelda game, and they haven't done it since. And I hated that. Um, so yeah, they artificially extended the length of this game when I think they could have cut 10 hours from this game, honestly. Uh, but oh, and the other thing before I forget, the upgrade system is garbage in this game. There is no point. There's no real major advantage. Even at the end, upgrading your shield might be the most important thing, but you can just do that boss rush thing and get the best shield in the game. You can upgrade the other things, but again, it's not necessary, and it feels like it's too hard to collect those bugs sometimes. And for very little benefit. It's like you have to go out of your way to find very specific bugs. I beat the game. I only upgraded my slingshot once, and that thing was fucking useless anyway because I had the bow, which is even better. I mean, like, it's just a terrible upgrade system. They did refine it in Breath of the Wild and made it work there, but in this game, it's garbage. Totally useless. So much crap to collect for no point. And also the other stupid thing was like there was always fanfare every time you collect something, even though you already collected it. I think it's some kind of glitch to do with changing the times or whatever. Um, I'm thinking of new things to criticize every time I think about it. One of the best areas in the game was that part when you're in the desert and you're in the boat and like the the water is created as you move through because time changes. That's really cool. But unfortunately, that ship dungeon is terrible. It's so obtuse trying to figure out what you're supposed to do next. I mean, I really do feel like you need a guide for that, which is a complaint that recur- is recurring in quite a few other Zelda games. But yeah, that part was pretty obtuse, but everything else was pretty straightforward. You can go to the fortune teller and she'll tell you where to go next, which is kind of useful. And I think the that eyeball statue thing is kind of useful, but I never used that either. But whatever. All right, so that's everything I have to say about the game. So what'd you guys think of it?